just to advise everybody that this is a public meeting and it's being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. We'll start with item 1, declarations of interest. There are none, I should say again for the microphone. Apologies for absence and any substitutes.
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Tavel and Councillor Weimark.
Thank you very much. Item 3, minutes of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting held on the 23rd of September. Any comments been made on them as to their accuracy, or are we happy to accept them? Nods and blank looks, which is usually a sign that everyone's happy. We've got a very long while, Jonathan, since you've raised a concern about the accuracy of the minutes. I'm wondering, either are you not reading them as well as you'd, or you're very, very happy with them recently? Wonderful. Okay, we move on to Chairman's announcements, which I have nothing to announce other than I was just going to offer my thanks, Peter. I did, Vice Chairman, did email him just warning him that I may not have got back from my parents' evening in time, but I have, which I don't know if he's as pleased as he looks. But thank you, Peter. I know you would have stood in and done a very good job.
I would have tried.
Thank you. Public speaking.
There's no public speaking, Chairman.
Okay, we'll move straight on to the Cabinet reports and the draft supplementary planning document, design code for South Norfolk and Broadland District Councils. Thank you, and it's Adam.
I should probably just warn you, Chair, that there's a run of 4 items from me, with the design code being the first. So, as you would have picked up from the report, we won some funding from the Government's Planning Skills Fund in 2024 and procured Tibbles Planning and Urban Design Limited to undertake a design code for us. There's been a huge amount of work done already, and you'll notice that the design code that you've got is a fairly polished document. We ran informal public consultation in July to September last year, then in late autumn last year, and also in the early part of this year. So residents, parish councils, yourselves, and technical experts like the Highways Authority and the lead local flood authority are aware of this document. The purpose of the design code is to apply to all residential schemes of between 100 and 500 dwellings. Large-scale developments bigger than that are covered by different policies in the local plan, and non-residential development and smaller householder level developments also excluded from this design code. The structure of the document itself follows the local plan, so we work out from the urban fringe to the market town and Aylsham, and then the village settlement hierarchy. It's worth noting that we're proposing a joint SPD for both Broadland and South Norfolk. That follows a pattern that we established recently with the self-build supplementary planning document. However, there's still room to reflect on each council's unique qualities. So underpinning the design code, we have a landscape assessment. That document for Broadland talks about how the distinct landscape features and how the settlements of the district have evolved over time. Furthermore, underpinning the design code is an assessment framework, and the purpose of that is to support negotiations between developers and the council's own planning officers when dealing with applications. The consultation is relatively low risk because of the amount of informal public consultation already undertaken. But as you'll appreciate, under the Constitution, we need to go through Cabinet sign-off processes to run that consultation. All being well, we hope to then bring the final document back for endorsement in the new year.
Thank you. Has anybody got anything they'd like to say or add at this point? Okay, we'll start with Caroline, then we'll go to Eleanor.
Thank you, Adam. It's a very comprehensive document. I'm very pleased to see on page 42 the inclusion of a statement which play provision should include diverse forms of play across the development, and play facilities should be fully accessible and inclusive for all users regardless of age, ability and gender. So I'm very pleased with that addition to the design code. I'm a bit more sceptical about page 9 with the accessible neighbourhood statement. I think that could have gone a bit further into securing houses for the future for people with disabilities. But I think we have had a chat about that, and I do recognise that sort of overlaps with the building regs. But otherwise, very good document. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I thought this was an excellent document. I think it's really well laid out. I think it's clear, effective. As far as I could see, it covers all the main themes that it should cover relating to design. And the consultation process was excellent. It was easy. It was good to engage with. I put forward, as I'm sure others have, quite a lot of suggestions for it, and they were incorporated where it was relevant. So that was really good to see. And I think there's a lot of extremely good planning documents coming out at the moment for approval. I think we're going to go through some others on this agenda, and I'd just like to thank the planning team actually, because there's a lot of hard work that goes in to produce all of these.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you. I know this obviously came forward in housing communities, and I'm glad that some of the anomalies where there were some items that conflicted have gone. And the majority of the document I still think is very good. But the thing that I still do have a problem with is the musts and shoulds. And we know that, you know, a must, yes, that has to be actioned. The shoulds, does it mean anything? You know, it's not enforceable. It's a should, it's a nice to have. Yes, I understand in the principle of explaining where it should be, but I still don't think that it's a document that is enforceable and can be utilised with the shoulds in it.
Jonathan.
Yeah, I think that sort of follows on to my question regarding excellent document, really lays out what we want to see, but we could say that, you know, where areas have done neighbourhood plans, if you know what I mean, they've done their plans because they can see what they want to see for their towns, and then if the plans are not followed, as in there's no, you know, that's more of a wish list more than anything else. So I think it's an excellent document, but that would be my concern, that the developers look at it and say, well, we could do all of that, but we won't do all of that. And I know that's up to the local councillors and obviously the planning officers to sort of steer them in the right direction. But I think a lot of this would be, we could do it, but we won't do it. And my concern would be then they know that the sort of the message from central government seems to be build, build, build. Therefore, once it gets to the planning inspector, it doesn't really matter if it's more houses that are sort of on their agenda. So it's really good. I think it's an excellent document, and it really can highlight what we want to see. But like I say, quite a few of the areas have got neighbourhood plans that they want to see followed. You know, they've done a lot of work on. I know Thorpe St Andrews took absolutely ages to do because we worked on a lot. So we'd like all developers to follow that, you know, exactly, but I know they won't. We'll still have to sort of fight the argument with it. But that would be my point, that it's a great document, but we need them to be able to sort of enforceably force to follow it, but I don't think they will.
Yeah, Paul.
Adam, this is really good, but in my ward I've got a number of builders who have form in getting planning permission, building a structure completely different to the permission that they have, and then getting retrospective approval for what they've built. I think this document is great, but do we also have plans to radically increase the number of people in the planning department to police it properly?
I think that last question is outside my remit, to be honest, and it's probably one for Ben Burgess or Phil Courtier. I think on the other points, I have a lot of sympathy with what was being said. You know, we do operate in what is essentially a discretionary planning system, so there is you know, a lot of should and negotiation in the system. But I think, you know, as we go through the consultation, we certainly can revisit whether we need to tighten up on some of those verbs. And you're absolutely right, Councillor Emsall, about the neighbourhood plans. They are part of the council's development plan, so they carry the same force as other policies. And you know, whether we put I can't remember off the top of my head whether we've got many references to the neighbourhood plan in the document at the moment, but that's certainly something we can look at prior to the final document coming back for endorsement in the new year, if that would be helpful.
Anybody else? I was just wondering if, I mean, it's quite fascinating, the breakdown of the sort of key design principles by fringe parishes and small market towns, and the breakdown, the sort of explanation between villages. But I'm wondering, is there what would we see, in your opinion, having, I know this is discussed in the Broadland element, but this is Broadland and South Norfolk have come together with this I've got this document. What would we see different in Broadland that isn't being done in South Norfolk, that would say that if I was driving from Cossey to Drayton, I might go, oh, they've got something different in Cossey than from Drayton. I'm just wondering, because there's a danger of coming up with a sort of Norfolkish style, a Broadlandish style, which is a sort of generic broad principle, which actually you'd say, well, South Norfolk sort of do that and North Norfolk sort of do that. So you end up with a homogenous sort of something which looks Norfolkish without being definitively different. So I don't know if that's too broad a question, but you know what I might be saying, hopefully.
No, I understand your question perfectly, and there is a danger, as you say, that we write a design code and it says the character of Norfolk is red brick and dark pan tiles, and all cladding on barns should be black or something like that. This document deliberately doesn't say that. What it does, it sets out a series of concepts, criteria. There's a lot of visual aids in the document, lots of hooks, if you like, for architects and architectural technicians to consider. And what we're essentially saying is, take this design code and all the ideas within it and use that to inspire you to come up with a design that fits your site. So we're not saying contemporary, we're not saying pastiche, we're not defining certain materials. We're just saying, here are the questions you need to be asking when you're designing your scheme. If an application comes in and one of our officers are concerned about it in some way, they've then got the assessment framework, which looks a little bit like a checklist in some ways, but then gives the officers to go back and say, well, I've got a particular issue over such and such issue. And it may be, you know, car parking, it may be the colour of the bricks, it could be the nature of the landscaping, whatever, but it's essentially asking those key questions rather than giving the answers.
Thank you. Yeah, that's. I mean, I think we've all seen examples of estates and large developments where you think we could do with a more variation of ideas, and we know there's a lot of areas which were built in the past where there's basically three designs of houses, which are house one, house two, house three, house one, house two, house three, and you see it just repeated in rows. And we'd love to have something which gets away and has some variation, and also variation between villages, because I know my house, I've delivered leaflets in various places across Broadland, and I go, oh, that's my house. And I go to another village and go, that's my house. Because the same developer has built the same house that I live in goodness knows how many hundreds of villages across the area. And if this creates some sort of not uniformity, but like I say, some broad bandwidth of which you can design things within, parameters within, I think that's to be welcomed. If anybody else got anything else they want to say, at this point there are recommendations on point one. You've got 4 separate points, haven't you? I'm just trying to think. I wasn't going to cut you off on there. I think all those in favour of the recommendations as listed within the minutes.
That's carried, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Adam. We'll move you on to your next part, which is the Norfolk Local Nature Recovery Strategy. Not that we've got to get your brain around 4 separate things, but thank you.
So this is not a supplementary planning document for one, so this is the exception. So, and this was a report I wrote jointly with Helen Sibley, who's our Green Infrastructure Officer. So the background to this is the Local Nature Recovery Strategy is a new requirement that came through from the Environment Act 2021, and its purpose is for councils to identify opportunities for better habitat connectivity and restoration. The adopting authority for the Local Nature Recovery Strategy in our area is actually Norfolk County Council. As a district council, we have a supporting role, and one of the questions we had to ask ourselves when preparing this report was how it fits into this council's own constitution. What we wanted to do was bring this report to you to make you aware of our role as a supporting authority and to explain how this council has a role in implementing the LNRS through the carrying out of its own functions. So examples of that are that we would use the LNRS in the preparation of local plans, which is why I'm sitting here, but also in determining planning applications, securing 10% biodiversity net gain and qualifying developments, which you'll remember came in last year. It also links closely to the council's own climate change and biodiversity delivery plan, and also to the council's role as a landowner and the stewardship of those land assets. So we just wanted to bring this document to Cabinet and Council's attention because it is the first of its kind.
Thank you. Has anybody got anything else to say? Eleanor?
Yes, thank you. Again, I think it's an excellent document. It went through a very long consultation process, which worked very well, I think. I'm really pleased to see documents like this come forward. It shows a massive progress in terms of planning focus on nature that we weren't seeing 20 years ago or so, and we're now seeing come forward, which is brilliant. So I'm really pleased it's going to be used for the preparation of local plans, because we will be preparing to produce our next local plan starting next year with the initial stages, so that's fantastic. And I also think that because this has been produced for Norfolk, well, one's been produced for Norfolk, one's been produced for Suffolk, but it was a joint organisation, you know, combined group of people from both those organisations who put it together. So I think it should dovetail quite well with the newly proposed combined mayoral strategic authority, because that will have responsibility for strategic planning across Norfolk and Suffolk. So that, you know, it will fit in quite well with that change in local government. And as it says in the report, I know it's not essential, but I would recommend that it does go to full council for endorsement. It could just go to cabinet, but I'd like to see it come forward to main council.
Has anybody else got anything they'd like to say?
Adam, was it endorsed by county yesterday?
Yes, it was.
I think it's particularly important for a council such as Broadland, given our Broads. I know there's a Broads authority, but the Broads, and I mean, actually within this planning document, the maps showing the different diversity of the district in terms of its forests and you know, habitats, that we actually have something like this which recognises that we've got a lot to look after and a lot that we can do to help recover it. So this is a brilliant thing in my view, but we will if no one else wants to say anything, we will go to the vote on this, which is all those in favour of the recommendations as listed.
And that's carried, Chairman, unanimously.
Thank you very much. I will pass on what you said, Eleanor, to Cabinet, just asking them, putting that to them, because I think that's just fair that someone, I report back what one person has said, but there may be someone there who feels on that. Let's go to the draft Greater Norwich Green Infrastructure Strategy Supplementary Planning Document, again with Adam.
So we're back to the supplementary planning documents, which just, I think, shows how we're at the end of one plan making cycle with the Greater Norwich Local Plan, which was adopted last year, and obviously we're about to begin the process again. So the whole purpose of this supplementary planning document is to assist development promoters to prepare high quality planning applications. As explained in paragraph 2.2 of the SPD itself, developers are advised to invest some time in preparing good evidence documents to support their planning applications, to show that their proposals fit with the local plan. The bulk of the SPD is actually quite straightforward. It provides in table 2 lots of links to a whole series of guidance documents to help development promoters evidence and show that their application fits with best practice. So policy 2 is a very broad ranging policy and covers a whole host of 10 social, economic and environmental issues, ranging from integrating new technology, green infrastructure, which we discussed previously, density, good design, promoting safe, inclusive communities, preventing flood risk and water efficiency. And what we're simply trying to do here is to point developers to all that wealth of good practice which is out there, and to then incorporate that in how they design their schemes. We appreciate that some developers might be reluctant to do extra work. There's obviously a huge cost and time that goes into preparing planning applications, but our case officer team would work with developers proactively, and we do explain how it's worthwhile in preparing these supporting statements, because they then help in the timely achievement of planning decisions. So it's very important to try and keep these requirements pragmatic, and to keep the system moving as quickly as we can. The document also talks about the need to monitor the local plan, and we are very upfront in that. A lot of time and resources has gone into preparing the local plan, and we want to make sure that it can be monitored effectively, and a key part of that is getting information back from development promoters. In terms of the details, this is a sub-regional piece of work, so not only Broadland but South Norfolk and the city too. So we'll be running this consultation through the Greater Norwich Local Plan website that we've had for several years, and we'll be dovetailing all our work with the comms team, both here as part of the one team, but also with the city as well. And a similar pattern, we're looking for permission to go out to a 6-week consultation, and then to bring the final document back to you in the early new year.
Thank you. Has anybody got anything they'd like to ask or add? Martin.
Thank you. Yes, great document, etc. Obviously, it states in 3.6 about the need for the public consultation, which yes, we can see that. My query was really around: has this already been discussed with any developers, and therefore looking with the developers at any extra burdens and everything else, and whether or not the ease of implementation is there?
Not directly with this SPD, and that would be the purpose of the consultation. The adopted local plan obviously went through a whole raft of consultation, and the local plan has been in place for over a year now. So, you know, we've got, I think, a decent feel for how to work with developers in a robust way. So we're challenging them to get the best quality schemes that we can, but also trying to keep that throughput of applications in the system. So I suppose no to your answer in the purest sense, but this consultation will hopefully draw that out. And we do have a developers forum coming up in a couple of weeks where obviously we can raise that point.
I think that's where I was going to, is whether there was developer forums that this was going through to ensure that, you know, that was where it was going.
Has anybody else got anything? Hello.
Yes, again, I'm really pleased to see this plan coming forward. It's very much in line with national policy. There have been some really big improvements since the last document was published, and the focus on climate change, nature, improving health, they are all some of the biggest challenges that we face. So it's really good to see those addressed. We know what we need to be doing. The hardest thing is making sure it actually happens in reality on the ground, but I'm sure that we do our best to achieve that. So as a document, I'm really pleased with it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think for me this is, you know, it is very similar to the first policy, if you know what I mean. This is a brilliant piece of work. It really highlights the need to keep the green infrastructure, the green corridors, which we have talked about for many years. Obviously, as the development happens, you need to keep the green corridors still through for nature and those pathways available. You know, we do have that situation in Thorpe St Andrew where our last development areas are a little bit, they are a lot more the green areas that we wouldn't like to see overdeveloped, but you know, they are going to be developed, but we've obviously got to look at that. And I think a document like this that highlights the best practices is the way forward. And I think it should be highlighted to developers. But again, you know, if they're only going to have to look at it and take it on board as opposed to actively follow the direct instructions, that will be where we struggle, because they'll just sort of say, oh, we can't do it. But, you know, I say, excellent document, and we're steering them in the right direction. But again, like for me, this is like the first document, which is it, how enforceable is it? But, you know, it's a good document, brilliant, thank you.
Okay, I think we'll go to the vote on this. All those in favour of the recommendations?
And that's carried unanimously.
Thank you. Adam, you have one more, which is item 10, the draft Sustainable Community Supplementary Planning Document. You come up with all the catchy titles, don't you? You just trip off the tongue. And Adam, I'll leave this one to you.
So yeah, very much the same thing. Again, I'm at risk of repeating myself. The recommendation is to go out to a 6-week consultation. We'll obviously coordinate the work through the City Council and their comms team, and bring the work back to you for formal adoption in the new year.
Has anybody got anything they'd like to ask about this? Eleanor.
I've just got a question. How long will this be in place for before it needs another review? Because obviously we've got a future plan for starting to develop another Greater Norwich local plan. So how does that work in terms of timescales?
So the government has set out its vision for an accelerated rate of local plan production. There's been many councils around the country that have struggled to produce a local plan, so they're looking to accelerate the system, and there's obviously lots of government policy behind that. But I think, you know, our commitment is to review the GNLP by 2029. Obviously, that would be post LGR, so we don't know the details of how that would work out as yet. But I then think, you know, these SPDs will be in place till, I would think, 2030. So I think they certainly have a lifespan of around 5 years, possibly more.
Thank you. Again, Eleanor, can...
Sorry, just an additional comment. I mean, I actually think it's a really good document. Again, it's really great to see it. It provides a lot of helpful additional information for developers and planners when they're considering applications. So, yeah, I'm happy to endorse it. Yeah.
Thank you. We'll go to the vote on this. All those in favour?
And that's unanimous, Chairman.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That brings your session with us to an end, I believe, Adam. And thank you very much for all that you've put into all those policies. Thank you. And we'll go to item number 11, the Broadland and South Norfolk Homelessness and Rough Sleeper Strategy 2025 to 2030. I'll hand over to the team.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, as you just stated, we're here to present the new homelessness and rough sleeper strategy for 2025 to 2030 for both Broadland and South Norfolk councils. Just wanted to note that Broadland and South Norfolk councils have historically taken a joint approach in the review and the formation of these strategies, and I believe this is the 5th time that we've actually collaborated on these strategies. I also wanted to note as well that this has historically been done with Norwich, and if anyone is wondering why this time we have chosen to step aside and do it with just Broadland and South Norfolk, it was agreed between us that the pressures for Norwich City Council are so different to the ones that we see in Broadland and South Norfolk that we thought to develop a strategy it was more appropriate to do it on our own without them, so that's the reason why we've done that this time. This is a statutory document. We do have a statutory duty under the Homelessness Act 2002 to publish strategy once every 5 years. And in the development of this one, we did a thorough review of our previous strategy to make sure that we are addressing the right issues, that we understood what those are. And if anybody, some of this is detailed in the report, but if anyone is interested in that, it is a rather thorough document and you can see it online if anybody would like to read it. Briefly, the vision for this strategy recognises there isn't one big solution to solving homelessness and rough sleeping across the districts. It's very much a joint effort between the councils with a number of solutions. And at this point, I'm going to pass over to Victoria to talk you through a bit of the detail of those.
Thank you, Chair. So I just wanted to talk briefly a bit about the priorities that were identified within the strategy. So when putting the strategy together, the homelessness mitigation work that's also been taking place has 3 key work streams, and these work streams take a whole view to different aspects of homelessness. So we have prevention, which is around stopping homelessness from occurring in the first place, accommodation, which is linking to the need for good temporary and supported housing, and also throughput, so that's around those sustainable housing solutions. So these work streams have been named in our strategy as our priorities. Firstly, because they're recognisable to us, and by sitting them in the document, it gives us a clear expectation on the work to take place. It gives us a direction over the next 5 years, and it also means that we can use our existing ways to measure progress consistently. But crucially, there are also themes that consistently came up through our engagement with stakeholders as we developed the strategy. We've also added a 4th priority area in relation to systems and collaboration. And that partnership approach is something we've really taken on board with this strategy, and that's why this version looks a bit different to the draft that we put forward in February for consultation, precisely because of the input, and we really wanted to reflect our consultation and engagement responses in the final version. And these changes are listed in the Cabinet report. So alongside the strategy, we'll have an operational action plan, which will be providing oversight on achieving against actions, and happy to take questions.
Thank you. Has anybody got anything they'd like to ask? Caroline, then I'll go to Stuart.
Thank you for the report. I noticed in section 3.4 the number of households increased from 44 in April to 73 in July. That seems quite a big increase, 79% increase. How are we coping in accommodating these families? Are you, hello, Richard. I aim my question at you.
Claire, is it okay if I moved it that far? Would that be okay? If I get told off. I mean, we've always used spot purchase as an overflow where we've needed to for accommodating people. There's also, at the beginning of the year, we had X amount of properties. Due to the temporary accommodation that we're buying throughout the year, we have a drip feed of accommodation slowly coming online, which we can then utilise to accommodate people wherever we need to. At present, Broadland spot purchase budget is looking at I don't want to get too excited, but a slight underspend, which compared to previous years is a celebration, because normally I'm sitting here thinking how on earth we're going to be £200,000 overspent, whereas at present we look like we're managing within budgets.
I only asked because I came in yesterday and the reception seemed to be full of people, families, and I don't know if the pressure's increasing as the months go by into the winter.
They always do. We always see seasonal ebbs and flows of demand. But work that Lindsay and the team and we're all doing regarding the homeless mitigation work stream had a seasonal permutations in there, because we always expect that. We know it will be quite busy right now, then it will start dipping down because everybody will want to be together for Christmas, and then unfortunately January will hit and then everybody will realise why they wanted to not be together at Christmas, and then we'll see an uplift in demand. That's unfortunately the seasonal demand that we see, and we're able to plan for that.
I just want to thank you for the work you're doing. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just, you mentioned as one of the parts of the strategy, collaboration, but in your intro you mentioned that we're not collaborating with Norwich, so the joint South Norfolk Broadland document. How will that work with Norwich if we're not collaborating with Norwich?
I think the best political way to answer that, we have in certain areas we have a really good relationship with Norwich. In certain areas we struggle. They are under significant pressure, and they really are. Residents do find challenge working with Norwich. Anybody who's had a case, I'm looking at Councillor Douglas, because in her other role she probably understands some of this. So they end up, so people do come to us as we pride ourselves on our service. It's hard. We still sit in the same meetings together. We still work together. We have ambitions of working closely together, but our strategies are very different, and the way in which we want to approach mitigating homelessness are very different. We want people to come to us. We want to support them and get in there early. It's the whole principle of the Help Hub is let's get to us early so then we can try and support you in avoiding homelessness. Unfortunately, because of the demand in which Norwich are facing, they're struggling with having the same model, because I think they might then consider themselves absolutely overwhelmed. We're blessed that we are able to, and this isn't me being we are provided with a team above our homelessness prevention grant to allow us to meet this kind of level of demand through the investment that members put into the service. So we're able to work in a service that we can feel really proud of. But we still work together in various strategies wherever we can. It's just when it's an individual council's homelessness strategy and rough sleeper strategy, we kind of felt it was best to work and put things into place so we don't have to water down the actions that we have to keep everybody happy. We can be proactive in the actions that we want to do and deliver as a councils ourselves.
Martin.
Thank you. Really good document, and pleased to see various things coming through. Obviously, we've got the issues with private rents on there, and obviously it's being compounded recently with various announcements or proposed announcements. And I just wondered to what effect those recent announcements had been included to within this document.
Sorry. Right, so we did a conference last couple of weeks ago, didn't we? And we said The private rental sector essentially has been burned to the ground, but out of the embers is going to be this wonderful thing, okay? And we feel, honestly, that a lot of the damage has been done, but now with the Renters Rights Bill, we are now going to have a framework to have a really decent private rental sector, and it will build up again. We had a open evening for a load of landlords to come here. We had, 60, I can't remember how many, 60 odd landlords that came here, and we said, we're there to support you as much as we can. We're not here to take to kind of punish you for trying to be a landlord. We want to work with you to be a decent landlord. Oh, and also, I've got a load of tenants here. If you would like I've got a load of ready-made tenants, and I do a load of checks, and I make sure they can afford it. And if anything, I could give them a rent in advance if you want. And that we can. So really, we are here, and we can provide you with lots of those ready tenants to pay your rent. So what we're trying to do with a Renters' Rights Bill is create a partnership approach rather than it being an us and them approach with landlords, to really open that up as another option to us. Because at the moment, the amount in which we actually get into the private landlord rental, I have a renters rent and deposit scheme budget. It's hardly spent each month because of the numbers in which I am getting into private rent, not due to lack of effort, just because we can't get them into private rent. And we need to open up that access again. And that's part of what the strategy really aims to do.
Just expand on that as well. We're also really blessed in this department that we work with housing and benefits jointly, so we have our benefits knowledge in there, and we're well aware that one of the problems that the Renters' Rights Bill is trying to address is the fact that benefits doesn't even touch the sides of what private rents are at the moment, and that is a big issue with people being less secure in their homes. So with this relationship we're trying to build with the landlords, we're trying to maybe charge less but have more security for the landlords and have an amount that the customer can actually afford, taking into account their benefits as well. So we're trying to build that into sort of more of a holistic package rather than looking at private rents and benefits as a sort of combative thing to try and work it together.
I've got Jonathan, Stuart and Peter.
Yeah, just sort of reading between the lines and with the figures, obviously we've seen the private rents increased and everything like that, but also obviously this number of those in temporary accommodation. Is any of that because people have been renting out and then they realise that they can move some tenants on and then put new tenants in at a different rate, and obviously that's why that's spiked, or is that not like that? Or
there will be an element of that. There will be an element where people have had a notice. A Section 21 at the moment, because you can have a no-fault eviction, people are provided, but we're not given a reason because it's a no-fault eviction. They don't have to do so. It's a Section 21, so there will be an element of that where they're able to then increase the rent above what the people in there would have been able to afford. I know we have people come to us and say the landlord wants to increase the rent by £100 and I simply can't afford it. What do I do now?
With obviously, I know the rules for the social properties is obviously once people are in there, they're in there for life. They don't get moved on, do they? They don't put the rents up. They do put the rents up, but not anything like this, I guess. But then I think my biggest concern for sticking up for people who are privately renting and struggling is those people in those social properties do not realise how lucky they are. I guess they might say, but we don't have enough bedrooms, therefore, but I get that point and everything. But for me, there is that feeling that there should be an element of understanding just how fortunate some people are now that they've got in before we've had these problems. Because the private rental market is insane, but lots of people have to do that. And there aren't the properties available to have that cushion, that pressure off, if you know what I mean. And I think that is very important to know that there are a lot of people who are in that position. And I personally, as a councillor, feel they don't appreciate how lucky they are compared with those that are stuck in the private rental. And I think that's something which we've got to look at in Broadland, because we do have a lot of people in private rented.
So a key part of the role that the team does is managing expectations as well. and part of that is from the allocations policy helps for that as well, because if you are in a social house, for example, but you are overcrowded, you are not as highly banded as someone who might be facing homelessness through the private rental sector. So there is the policy behind it, but a lot of the work that we do, a lot of the council inquiries I get, a lot of the complaints I get is about managing expectations too. And if anyone's seen my response, it's normally, I do appreciate how unfortunate your situation is right now. However, we have people who are actively homeless right now, and therefore we have to prioritise them against you. And yeah.
One last thing, obviously I do work for a charity now, and we obviously do see people who are homeless and everything like that, and I do hear always positive things about Broadland, and to be fair, South Norfolk as well. But yeah, compared with comments that are made about other councils, the comments about Broadland are always very positive.
Stuart.
I think really my question was answered. I just wanted to compliment how you're working together with benefits departments, working with housing departments to get better outcomes, and working with the private landlords to offer them options which gives them some degree of surety of tenure, although, as you said, the return on in terms of bog standard rental might not be quite as great, but what you've done is the vetting process. What you've offered is a degree of security for that private landlord. But the bottom line is those individuals get home. And I would echo what Jonathan said, genuinely, sincerely congratulate. You know, this has been an ongoing thing which Broadland, South Norfolk have done and done well. And I think that absolutely coordinated approach, working together to achieve these better outcomes, benefits the end user, the client of the service. And I do think you do an extremely good job, and I would like that on record, Chair, because you know it is noticeable. I see it and I hear it as well as Jonathan, and I'm sure most councillors in this room. Thank you.
Peter.
With the onset of no-fault evictions no longer being applied, to what extent is that going to change the market, in the sense that many renters will say, quite frankly, it's not worth the risk staying in this market, I'll move my business elsewhere? To what extent has that been factored into all of your understanding of needs and resources that will be required to meet those needs?
Again, through the Homeless Mitigation Fund, we've very much taken that into consideration. We'll see whether I'm right in this statement or not. The majority of people that turned up for the Renters' Rights Bill workshop that we did in the evening, they fall into two categories. One, it's their business and they run it, and they know what they're walking into, and they're ready to take it on. And then you've got the other ones, which are accidental landlords or people who have a spare property. They've moved in together, so they've just let that other property. They're not necessarily in the business to make money. They're in the business to keep the capital secure and just keep it to one side, and then eventually one day they might dream of retiring, and then they can sell that property. But they're not looking to exit the market very quickly. The people who have exited the market were there to make as much money as quickly as possible. The ones we're left with are the ones which I think and I hope will stick around for a little while, and we just need to support them through this process. We are looking at other avenues. We've got the private rental sector model, which Broadland Living are now delivering on behalf of Broadland Council. That's where we lease a property from a private landlord. Broadland Living lease that property from a private landlord. If my tenant can't quite afford the difference in rent, the council pays the difference. So it allows us to go into that market, and if people are 50 and 50, whether they want to stay in there, we go, yes, but we could provide you with this package of support, so they don't rush out the market, and then they can see how the land lies for a little while this bill goes through the process.
So what percentage do you think of landlords will actually give up?
I mean, Are you expecting me to put money on it? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I can't put a figure on it. I wouldn't be if I were to put a guess on it. I wouldn't be at all surprised if we see another 10% reduction. But it's not. We have seen a massive proportion of private rental exit the market up to now. I can see a small amount when people start realising what they've got to do, but it's going to be small. And you've got to remember, they're going to be selling properties which someone's going to buy and they're wanting to get rid of them. So maybe someone who was 50 and 50, whether they're going to rent or buy, will then be able to buy that property. So then they've got home ownership. It's not as if the property's disappearing. It's still within the housing stock somewhere.
Just again, to add a bit of data context to that, we did some data prediction work with the company, PPL, which we talked a lot about, which has informed a lot of our homelessness mitigation strategies. They're sort of agreeing with what Richard's saying, is that the loss of the market for the private landlords pretty much has happened, and there isn't, because their data is more informed by various studies and things like that. They're not expecting it to fall with any sort of significant percentage going forward. We think the people have left the market that are going to. So just to sort of give an outside perspective on it, that was their opinion, that it shouldn't really drop that much significantly further. We think we've seen the big change.
Just to add on to it, you've got interest rates aren't that low at the moment, are they? So if they've got to sell the property, someone's got to buy it. So the market is not buoyant enough. So potentially people might have got out of there if their property was worth 30% more than they hoped it for. But the property market isn't exactly the most buoyant place to be able to sell these kind of properties at the moment. And on that note, that's what we're taking advantage of with our temporary accommodation purchases, because we're getting purchases at a lower price because people are willing to trying to get out of the market.
Jonathan.
Just quickly, while we've got you here and you're answering questions, are traditional landlords who would rent out a place for, say, a year, like on a constant basis, are they moving over to sort of like the Airbnb thing where they rent these properties out for a week, if you know what I mean? And obviously you make so much more money renting out a property for each, like people in it for a week, if you know what I mean, as opposed to a whole year. Are we seeing a big, because I know Airbnbs are the thing and everything like that, but are we seeing a lot of people, like the landlords, did a lot of them say, oh no, we're going to go into doing that because there's a lot more money in it?
So I'm really glad we don't live on the coast. As beautiful as South Norfolk and Broadlands are, yeah, you've got the Broad, so there might be a little bit there, but we don't see the level that, North Norfolk are really struggling with the Airbnb side of things, but we don't see the numbers that we might otherwise have seen.
Thank you. I think we've exhausted everyone's questions. I just think that that shaping the strategy page on 396, 397 show the amount of interventions done by the council, which is obviously helping to support people who are in need, but also to prevent that need in the first place. Underlines what a good job is being done by both councils. And, again, when you come back to that figure on there about 45% of individuals in our rough sleeper service self-reported as having mental health conditions, this could all be sorted if we got was a large the biggest intervention that can be done clearly would be coming from central government to properly support mental health services, and then think about the burden that would take off councils on top of everything else. But you're doing a very good job in everything you're doing, and this document is wonderful and explains that really well. So we'll move to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendation?
And that's unanimous, Chairman. Carried.
Thank you so much for answering all our questions. We will move now on to item 12, the material recycling facility contract extension. Scott. Oh.
As this is about contracts, isn't this below the line, or is it just because we're just extending the current contract? I just looked at contract extension and thought it would be below the line, but it's not.
It was originally going to be, but then I think it was deemed that it was not necessary.
Especially when we have a below the line item coming up, but I gather that probably all will become clear.
That's always a good start. So the paper recommends the extension of the materials recycling facility contract. So the facility at Cossey where all Broadland's recycling is taken to be sorted into its different component parts and sent off to different parts of the world to then be turned into new things. The contract began in 2014. It's run by News, Norse Environmental Waste Services, which is a joint venture between all the councils in Norfolk and Norse, with each district council being a shareholder, but the county council are a signatory to the contract as well. The world of recycling is in a rather complex place and has been for a few years and will continue to be so for a few more years. There's lots of policy that's only just starting to emerge, and the impact of those policy instruments on what we will collect is as yet unknown. So we've recently had the introduction of the extended producer responsibility scheme for packaging. So the packaging industry are having to make large contributions to our costs of dealing with packaging waste. On the horizon for 2027, we've got the deposit return scheme for drinks containers. That will quite likely take a large amount of the aluminium cans and plastic bottles, the highest value materials that we collect, out of our recycling stream at what we collect at the curbside. There are other various sort of lesser impact policy changes on the horizon, but when combined, what we collect now and what we collect in 4 or 5 years' time from people's households could look very different, which is why we are recommending an extension to the contract for a period of time so that we can see that through to better understand what the future looks like. The facility that we use, whilst not owned by the district councils, is in public ownership, and obviously with the future local government landscape in Norfolk as yet unknown, it's not felt it's the right time to invest in that facility. It's now over 20 years old. It's been processing recyclables for over 20 years. It does need some investment to bring it up to sort of more modern sorting standards, but it's not worth doing that until we know what we're going to be sorting or what we need to be sorted some way down the line. So this extension will see all the councils in Norfolk through and our future councils through to at least 2030. And hopefully by then we'll be in a position to make a bit more of an informed decision around what we may want to do to that facility to bring it a bit more up to modern standards. So we're recommending that contract be extended. Obviously happy to take any questions you may have.
Jonathan.
Yeah, I just think this sounds like a really quite sensible thing to do. I just can see that things have changed, and I can remember I must have been about 5 years ago, and where I think they were talking about where paper used to have, you know, the highest value and everything like that. It would, the guy was saying that the milk bottles, the white plastic bottles, they're about the only thing they've got like a real value, and we've seen everything else go up and down, and depending on the world markets and everything like that. So yeah, I think things will be changing, and we're seeing quite a lot of differences, and we're seeing things that we don't quite understand yet. For instance, like everywhere is now collecting the soft plastics, which we know is all not recycled, that's just burn. So that's like, something has to change there at some point. And it does seem to me that packaging is changing all the time. So yeah, I think, like I say, investing in a future which is unknown is going to be a crazy situation, especially with local government changes. So I think this is a very sensible idea.
Thank you. Yeah, the markets are very turbulent. I mean, as the report details, the gate fee that we pay now since the contract was extended back in 2021, the gate fee is a variable gate fee, and that is dependent upon the market prices that are achieved for the materials that we collect. That has ranged from a low of 46 pence per tonne a few years ago to a high of £95 per tonne due to that fluctuation in the world market prices for materials.
Caroline.
It's a bit off piece, but are we going to get those machines where you can put the cans in and you get coupons back like they do in Germany? They had them in Germany when I was a child, and that's a long time ago. It's about time we got up to date with it.
that's one way of doing a deposit return scheme. The government haven't quite yet announced what exactly that will look like. RVMs, or reverse vending machines they're called, they are certainly likely to be a feature if we do end up with a deposit return scheme.
There's a trial somewhere in East Anglia, isn't there? So on the Look East, where they had a couple of those machines. Do you know about it?
I know Kings Lynn had a couple at some of their leisure centres. I think that might be.
Stuart.
Yeah, again, I completely endorse what everybody else has said. Just one observation. On the basis that the MRF will need an upgrade going forward, and a lot of the equipment is getting quite old, and obviously it has a limited lifespan, what do you see, if anything? Now, I appreciate you haven't got a crystal ball, but what do you see is, if anything, are the capital implications for this authority or any form of new authority based on LGR? Because capital investment in the MRF is high. Where the MRF sits is quite a unique position as an arm's length company outside of News sitting as part of Norse, etc., etc. So there is potential for some fairly hefty capital costs. Within the contract, where do we sit potentially for liability of those costs or not, as the case may be? Because I remember going through the pain of this a few years ago and negotiating quite understandably with News and Norse, and based around the actual level of shares this council has got in the trading or the holding company. Do you envisage any large capital costs going forward? I mean, as I say, I do appreciate you can't answer this definitively, but I would welcome a view.
So none of the assets currently sit with the News that we are a shareholder in. The assets sit in what we term Old News, Norfolk Environmental Waste Services, and they are leased to New News. Capital investment is one thing that's been under discussion for a number of years, and the most effective way of doing that. There will probably be a requirement for some short-term capital investment in that facility in the lifetime of this extension. If we want to collect plastic film and pull that out appropriately, there's probably somewhere in the region of £1 to £3 million investment required. The whole rip out everything and install new equipment is probably in the region of £20 to £25 million worth of investment. Historically, that investment has come from Norse and repaid through the gate fee over the terms of the contracts that we've had with them. But there has been sort of discussions that the authorities can access borrowing at or capital reserves at lower rates, and it may therefore be beneficial for the authorities to do that. This extension doesn't commit us to anything. There are business cases kind of being looked at around, as I say, plastic film and other requirements that we may have under simpler recycling. And so those will be assessed on their own merits, and obviously reports will be brought forward if that's what we're looking to do for that. So it could be zero, or it could be a bit, or it could just be done as in the same mechanisms as has been done previously.
Yep.
Yeah, on that basis, thank you for your answer. I think it's helpful. But would that still operate, and does it still operate through the Norfolk Waste Partnership? Is that still applicable? And how can I say, is there joint recommendations made through the Norfolk Waste Partnership to achieve these outcomes? Because obviously all of the participants in the Norfolk Waste Partnership, all of those who use the MRF, effectively are shareholders and stakeholders in the success or failure of the MRF. So does that still go through there, through the Norfolk Waste Partnership?
So yes, so every district council has taken a very similar paper. Broadland will be the last to go, actually, at Cabinet next week. So 5 of the 7 have so far approved that. South Norfolk should hopefully get approval on Monday, and Broadland on Tuesday of next week. So yes, it's all bit. I'm the lead officer for Norfolk for the MRF contract, and yeah, this has been this first started with the Norfolk Waste Partnership Board approximately a year ago. A report went to them with various options. They sort of narrowed down which options they thought they wanted to look at further. It's then been through the leaders group and the chief execs group before coming back to the respective authorities, as the Waste Partnership doesn't have any decision-making powers.
Peter.
Given that, frankly, this is an option we cannot refuse, given that everybody else has agreed and we're certainly not going to do it all on our own, but looking at the options that you've listed on page 424, one of them says, basically, we can't do it because of a tight timescale. Why are we in a situation why we have a tight timescale? Why didn't we consider these options earlier? Because now, at the moment, there's no alternative but to agree.
The tight timescale only really refers to the building of a new facility. So we could go out to market and we could be transporting the recycling outside of Norfolk. There is a MRF that's in Cambridgeshire that's got some capacity because about around a year ago Cambridgeshire did a tender, and a lot of their recycling is now going to the northwest of the UK. So their former MRF operator there has a facility that has got a lot of capacity going. I think the members of the Waste Partnership Board didn't feel that was a realistic option and didn't want to explore outside of Norfolk when we've got a facility on our doorsteps that is, you know, supporting the local economy as well.
Thank you. Oh, go on, Martin.
Sorry, just one quick question, and it sort of falls within this, but it doesn't. But it is. It was really around the percentage of waste that is being recycled, and obviously, you know, how are Broadland residents comparing with others, and would there be necessarily any type of not training, but guidance, further guidance required to help and assist in increasing the amount of waste that is recycled to go there? Obviously, we're extending the contract, but that needs to be part of that overall thought behind it.
Yeah, we've got a good, well-resourced recycling team, and that's their bread and butter, really. So we've got a recycling action plan that was agreed earlier in the year. So that's now, some of the activities of that are now sort of coming into play. Broadland is already the top recycler in Norfolk and has been for as long as I've been in waste, actually, which is coming up for 20 years now. We are, in the next few months, we're launching a new app in the next few weeks, actually, a new waste and recycling app that we will push to residents and try and encourage, and we can do push notifications. We're looking at a more targeted approach to communications. So we will take the data that we have in terms of where we may have areas of high contamination, and we can target those messages to people on those rounds, both through the app, and we're going to look at what other channels work for different socio-economic groups as well. So we've got the app. We will be doing, for the first time in a long time, a sort of a service information leaflet to every household later in the year. So a little booklet that explains all about the waste and recycling services that we offer. Obviously, we have got a food waste collection as well, but that's not used by every household. So we want to encourage the uptake of that, which will drive our recycling rate up. The challenge that we have, and as I've just put in the narrative for the performance reports for Q2, is one of the outcomes or one of the byproducts of the EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility Scheme I mentioned earlier, is that the manufacturers now are paying based on the weight of packaging that they put onto the market. Now, a lot of the packaging that is out there is recyclable anyway, and certainly they will pay a lower rate for packaging that is deemed recyclable than packaging that is deemed non-recyclable. So we are seeing packaging becoming lighter. So if we still collect the same number of cardboard boxes and things, but everything is 10% lighter, the weight of our recycling will go down. and we are already starting to see that the impact of that policy change. Now, there is an inherent environmental good in that happening, and there is talk in the waste industry of coming away from a percentage-based metric for measuring recycling performance, but that's what we have at the moment. So yes, that was probably quite a long answer to your question, but yes, we will continue to promote and encourage residents to recycle as much as possible, but Broadland is still the top performer, and when it comes to the contaminants that people put in their recycling bins that they shouldn't, both Broadland and South Norfolk are the two top performing authorities in Norfolk for that.
And the other thing was around where a lot of the recycling or recyclable stuff says we cannot do it at present. Please take it to there. And I just wondered on there whether the uptake is as expected, and because the perception is that not many people take it and they are just putting it in the non-recycling bin.
Is that things like the plastic films? And I think you have a hardcore of committed recyclers who will take their plastic films to the supermarkets. From next April, it does become a requirement on each local authority to collect that material at the curbside. We are in the midst of a trial in Norfolk at the moment for collecting soft plastics and how that may make its way from somebody's bin to the MRF and then through the MRF. We're using what we call survival bags, so asking people to put the material into a bag, a coloured bag, so that it can easily be picked out once it gets to the MRF. So we're just trialling that at the moment. The big problem, as the supermarkets have found out and as was reported in the media some months ago, is that there's very little in the way of markets for that material at the moment. So I think it was 70% of what's going through the supermarket collections is going for incineration. Now, I can't see the sense in us collecting that material through the recycling service at a higher cost to send it through the MRF to then send it off for incineration. So one of the discussions that has taken place at sort of partnership level so far is the option for Norfolk to look at a non-compliant position for that material until such a time as we do look at the MRF in a wider sense. And I said earlier there'd be a minimum sort of £1 to £3 million worth of investment to take that out and take that material out at scale. For a material that is not going to generate a return, there is obviously no business case there. And a lot of authorities are currently pushing back on government on that requirement for next year. So I think that's still an evolving landscape.
Thank you for that explanation. It does, it does make you wonder where we're going. We're just being forced to collect stuff that nobody wants. It doesn't make any sense, and at cost. Let's move to the recommendation. All those in favour?
Yeah, that's carried, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, and for your explanations. I think that was made clearer by the end. And we now move to the exclusion of the press and public. I move that the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the remaining items of business because otherwise information which is exempt information by virtue of paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended by the Local Government Access to Information Variation Order 2006